Hello and welcome to the Ancient Alternative View. Today we're going to take a walk with pre-Ice Age culture, namely the Gravettian. Were they just a hunter-gatherer culture? Not in my opinion, and not what we're going to look at today. Can we prove with physical evidence that this culture was actually far more advanced than we gave it credit for? I think with the hallmarks we're going to see today, we can prove uncategorically that pre-Ice Age cultures were far more advanced than we are led to believe. Ancient Alternative View. For those of you that have been with me a while, you'll recall on my original Gravettian episode, we used the non-flight bird hallmark and this website, which I will pop onto the descriptions for you to look at your convenience. Now it's important because we're looking today at the Pavlov Gravettian in detail. The Pavlovian is a noteworthy variant of the Gravettian culture. Its centre was located in Moravia, which is Chechnya, and the culture reached northern Austria and southern Poland. Now we've read this before, but it's very important that we look at this again. Typical features of the Pavlov Gravettians: many documented innovations in technology, which if you remember we looked at before, formation of relatively large and permanent settlements, stable economy, sufficient food supply, prosperous society. We've looked at the importance of mammoths and their hunting, and greater tendency to inhumation of the dead. Now, it's important also to remember that whilst looking at the Gravettian, we have loads, the largest number of fact of skeletons that have been studied. So this isn't me making it up, this is actually DNA evidenced all across Europe, where you can see the pattern of the Gravettians. However, the Pavlovian culture is remarkable for a lot of inventories and a wide range of diverse technologies. Some of them such as production of ceramic figurines, which you and I guys know as the Venus statues. All around the Pavlov mountains that we're going to look at near Dolny Vesternice were found these Venuses. Now, were Venuses looking at the Gravettian women? No, they were looking at the stars, the Venus that you and I know best. And the best known Moravian Venuses can be considered a form of geometricized art. Nevertheless, the depicted art is also present, for example, the ivory female head from Dolny Vesternice. Now, the Darwin theory doesn't suggest that the Gravettian would look like this. The Gravettian look pretty much exactly the same as us. Now, what I would like to suggest is 33,000 years ago, 33,500 years ago, it's important to remember time here. Now, the Gravettian were around until, let's say, the Cataclysm, for those of you that haven't studied after that, where the Mogollon show DNA of the Gravettian. Also Genghis Khan showed DNA of the Gravettian, which far precedes the Cataclysm. However, if we go to Cataclysm, then their culture was around, you know, for 21,500 years, which if we put that into our minds, that the Roman Empire and what it achieved in 1,000 years, give or take, 21,000 years, these guys weren't sat in caves sharpening sticks, guys. Now, I wanted to show you a new theory that I've come up with, which I actually think that, yes, alright, when these guys travelled, they did make houses like this. But I've got a new theory for you, ladies and gentlemen, of the Ancient Alternative View. I think on the 21,000 years that the Gravettian were around, that we can prove that they not only were great hunters, fantastic with settlements as they moved around, but I think they were the precursor for the pyramids themselves, I think that the Gravettian actually formed a set of pyramids that we're going to look at today. So what we're going to be looking at today, guys, this is the Pavlov Hills. I call them the Pavlov Pyramids. You can actually see the three summits here. We're going to have a look at these in detail, but a few things to notice. These images, by the way, were supplied to me by Dave at Uchronia Utopia, who has extensively researched the Gravettian Empire with myself and helped with, and if not, pretty much worked with me on every step of the way, the Gravettian series that we're going to do. So a lot of theories are down to him as well as myself, so I'd like to credit him before we start also, so thank you, Dave. But anyway, the Pavlov pyramids, we'll have a look at these closely via Google Earth, but one thing I'd like to point out is via the front of the Pavlov pyramids there's a water source, evidently like you would find at Giza, the Nile. And also I attribute the Gravettian to being excellent star watchers, and whether the sun rises and the solstices in between these pyramids, we're going to do more research on this and see exactly how they're orientated in comparison to Giza. But you can see straight away naturally that, of course, over 33,000 years ago, 35,000 years ago now, you're going to have got a lot of growth over these, but when we look closer you'll see the mineralogy underneath and quite a few surprises as well. Now this is another image here looking across the water towards Pavlov, and obviously the town of Dolce Venestais is behind, and I mean we can zoom in ever so slightly here without trying to lose the quality, and you can almost already start seeing the mineralogy of the middle pyramid, and also here the end pyramid, and also here, and the mineralogy in between. Now the river hasn't receded quite as much as what the Nile has, so take that as you will, but the evidence suggests, ladies and gentlemen of the ancient alternative view, that the Gravettian used bone to write their maps on, and this is a map of Pavlov, and I'd like to bring to your attention that this was one of the most early writing systems using mapping to actually show the Pavlov pyramids and the area of Pavlov and Dolny Vesternice, which we are going to look at in detail, the Pavlov pyramids. I wonder what your view is so far of the evidence that we've seen of the Pavlov pyramids. Don't you think it's eerily similar to what we see at Giza? And wouldn't it be nice to strip back the foliage and actually see what's going on under here? Well, we're going to have a closer look, ancient alternative view. So we're going to take a little bit of a walk on the wild side with the Gravettian. This is Pavlov and Dolny Vesternice that we've looked at through the article today, and this is our plateau, and it's absolutely enormous. If we go down onto a 3D sort of image of it and scan around, you can actually see the enormity of it. Absolutely huge. And what I would like to do is take a little bit of a look around it with you. And first of all, if we have a little zoom down, I mean from what we're looking up to the peak, we zoom down momentarily, you're going to be shocked at the fact you can only see 2 peaks of what we were looking at on our image. So this is our first angle that we're going to have a look at our peaks with. And as you can see, first and foremost, we've got a water source. We'll have a better view of this. It goes all the way around. And as we turn to our peaks, you can only see really the two of them at this point. It goes over the back. We'll try and zoom back out ever so slightly and have a look. And at the top here, we'll go and have a look at this. I call this the quartz crystal castle. And the mineralogy of these peaks is built up of quartz crystal. And if we come back out of this view, just so you could see the peaks, and we'll zoom back out, come back across, click back onto our street view, and itself absolutely intriguing. Dave Hanrahan at Ukraine have done extensive hours of research following the DNA evidence of the Gravettian. And you've got to imagine that this is obviously our time span of the Gravettian Empire, and with the enormity of that empire and how far it reached, we surmise that, you know, they could have travelled across the Bering Strait from Russia. I mean, look at the lake. Well, you've got this at Giza, haven't you, the Nile, which has receded almost 8 miles now, which this one hasn't. You can almost see the mineralogy here of the quartz. Now, of course, the castle has actually been maintained. You can see brick and so on as it's been rebuilt, but the actual rock itself is this same quartz style stone that they've built it up with. And if you look at the water source coming round a river bend, which funnily enough Dave and I speak of a lot, which every ancient site had, a megalithic site had a water source on a river bend. And we can see closely here that the actual rock itself, I mean, if we were to take all this away and look at the steepness of that first peak, there's no receding whatsoever like we find towards Giza. There's nothing that we find towards Cairo. So were these pyramids actually functional and working a very long time before? Did the pyramids of Giza come before this? You know, the late great Sir John Anthony West prescribed that we all should remember 33,000 years ago as a golden era. I mean, it's absolutely huge. The golden era that our megalithic builders came from. Now, I for one absolutely idolise the man and agree with him wholeheartedly that we should be looking at that as an era for where our megalithic builders came from. I mean, we've got DNA evidence that spans back now to 355,000 years ago that ACH, atomically correct humans, were on the earth. Now, it's always been written in mainstream evidence that we were in caves with copper chisels, sticks and stones, but we're all coming to the conclusion now that this simply was not the case, that we were just sat in caves for 20,000 years. Now, when you look at the Gravettian and their empire, again, we've got an excellent view here of the water source that goes around, and you can see the mineralogy of these stones and the size of what would have been their pyramids here. Absolutely enormous. Now, if we could take away all of this and we could see how these were built, then we would see what exactly they were doing with these pyramids. Now, they're phenomenal. They span absolute miles. Absolute miles. They're huge. And yes, all right, Giza pyramids are more refined. You can see them in blocks. I appreciate that. So, were they the finished article of what the Gravettian were actually attempting to achieve? And again, here an overview of just how huge the plateau of these three pyramids are, they're absolutely now. And all across at the pyramids. I mean, you can go in to the Couldenth and take a look around Dolny Vestais, Pavlov, and this is literally where the home of the Gravettian were, that spanned across Europe. And let's put this into context. Their empire spanned a lot further than what the Roman Empire did. And it's important to remember time here, guys. Time is very, very important. They were not sitting in caves sharpening sticks for 21,000 years hunting mammoth. Yes, the megafauna was completely different. The peaks here, absolutely unreal. You've got another view of the water source that they would have had. Now, were these functioning pyramids? Did these pyramids act as a precursor for the pyramids that we see today at Giza? Now, I for one actually believe that they were. I think the Gravettian gave the pyramid builders information. I think that the Gravettian were far, far more advanced than what we give them credit for. Pre-Ice Age culture in its entirety, I think, was far more advanced than we give it credit for. And the Gravettian's DNA is found as far across as Sri Lanka. It's found in South America, in North America. So the Bering Strait has got to be put into context here, that they could have travelled across there. We know they span the entirety of Europe, Northern Africa. So the Gravettian, an absolutely phenomenal group of people. And we're looking across the plateau here. This is an opposite angle to what we were seeing before, and it comes back across to what would have been the woodlands of the pyramids. And you saw yourselves looking back from the river on the photographs we looked at prior. You saw, let's have a look here, I think it's down here somewhere, how it hasn't receded. Were these functioning? Was show people how to build the pyramids? Was it a template for the pyramids of Giza? They were all over that area. I mean, if you lay down the Silk Road, the New Road as we call it, then the Silk Road is identical to the Gravettian Empire. And if we look at the mineralogy of the stone again, onto this pyramid, it follows all the way down to the base. This quartz style crystal stone, and you're getting sort of the height here of just how huge these pyramids were. Absolutely massive. You can see how far the river runs across. Now, it's about time we started looking at different theories to what was going on. We did not crawl out of rocks and build the pyramids. I'm sorry, it just didn't happen. You know, I'm an alternative researcher, and I'm looking at DNA evidence that spans back a lot further than 33,000 for the three peaks. The Gravettian were the lozenge marker that we follow at the ancient alternative view. Now, the additions for cataclysm down to southern Spain, the Neanderthal were, when they spawned in some of the worst conditions, freezing cold conditions, and bear with me, I'm trying to find you a specific image here. And with that in mind, the freeze different of in star alignment to show us where to go if cataclysms were happening. We have to open our minds to new theories, ladies, an alternative view, and I believe was or a template for the pyramids of Giza. Now, I'd like to go back and show you what we were looking at. Now, those pyramids, yes, okay, they may have looked like they lived in these, and that's how people have portrayed it. But when we look at the evidence suggests something completely different here. That these guys were the template. They were the template, guys, for the pyramids of Giza. And I'm going to put it out there. I do believe Sir John Anthony West in saying that the golden age of 33,000 years ago is the most important time to look at. It's when civilizations, the Denisovans, the Aurignacian, the Neanderthal spawned the Gravettian, and they passed the lozenge hallmarker to them. We'll be doing another episode on the circular technological hallmark pass of power in coming episodes, where we can physically see the Zoroastrian taking that circular hallmark. Now, that's far, far later on, of course, and we're now looking at pre-Ice Age. So, but you can see as we're rotating around here just how enormous this pyramidal plateau was. Now, it's up to you whether you can open your mind, ancient alternative view, to whether this was true. But they did have an empire for 21,000 years. DNA proves that. Now, were they just sat in caves? Or were they making pyramidal structures that were the precursor? Were they copying what they'd already seen? Were the pyramids of Giza far older? Which could be the case, guys. No one has put a date onto these because nobody knows. All we can do is follow the physical evidence. Now, the Gravettian were very real, and we've now found a plateau with 3 pyramids on there with a water source similar to the Nile. We know there are pyramidal structures in South America, North America, all over the world across the equator line, and a lot more. Were these some of the templated pyramids for what we see at Giza, or did the Giza pyramids come before? I'd love to hear your thoughts, ancient alternative view. And in future episodes, guys, we're going to be looking at migration patterns for the Gravettian, also the DNA evidence that shows exactly where they went over their empire, what they taught maybe, and we're going to look at the hallmarks that they gave. Now, I hope you've enjoyed the new theory of the Gravettian pyramids today, and I look forward to hearing your views. This episode is dedicated to my mum, who sadly passed away on the 10th of March, and we had her funeral yesterday, and she was a huge advocate of ancient history, was very proud that her son was doing this channel. So I'd like to say rest in peace to my mum, and thank you very much to my research team who have done everything in their power to stick with me. Thank you to Michael at the Lost History channel for everything that he's done and the fantastic publication he did on behalf of my mum. I respect you all very much, and I look forward to hearing your views. All the very best.